June 6th, 1944. Normandy coast, France. The cold comes first. Not just the chill of the Atlantic air, but the kind that settles into your bones and refuses to leave. From his position high above Omaha Beach, Gefreiter Karl-Heinz Bauer presses his back against damp earth and stone, the smell of wet grass and cordite mixing in the air. His helmet feels too tight. His mouth is dry. Below him, the sea is alive, dark, churning, and filled with movement. Landing craft. Hundreds of them. Karl-Heinz tightens his grip on his carabiner 98K, the wood slick with mist and sweat. He has been awake for nearly 30 hours, roused before dawn by distant thunder that turned out not to be weather at all. The Atlantic horizon had lit up with flashes, naval guns, larger than anything he has ever seen. Now the enemy is here. These are the Americans. He has heard about them for years. Everyone has. The Wehrmacht briefings describe them as inexperienced, overconfident. A nation of factory workers turned soldiers, dependent on machines and material rather than discipline or skill. American troops, the officers said, lacked the hard edge of the German soldier. They fought with numbers because they lacked nerve. They relied on artillery because they could not fight man to man. Karl-Heinz believed it. Most of them did. As the ramps of the first landing craft slam down, machine gun fire erupts along the bluffs. Men tumble into the surf under a storm of bullets and shell fragments. Some disappear instantly. Others struggle forward, weighed down by packs, rifles, radios. Everything a soldier needs to survive, and everything that makes survival harder. Karl-Heinz fires, once, twice. He works the bolt by instinct. The Americans keep coming. They are not moving fast. They are not elegant. Many look terrified. Some freeze, some fall. But enough of them, too many, push forward, step by step, through water turning red around their legs. This is not what Karl-Heinz expected. Long before Normandy, German opinions of American soldiers had been formed without ever seeing them. Propaganda posters, radio broadcasts, and officers' lectures painted a clear picture. Britain was stubborn, but declining. Russia was dangerous, but crude. America was rich, soft, and untested. In 1942, when U.S. forces first appeared in North Africa, German veterans of the Africa Corps largely dismissed them. Early encounters seemed to confirm the stereotype. At Kasserine Pass, inexperienced American units broke under pressure, retreating in confusion. German officers laughed it off. "These are not real soldiers," one German commander reportedly said. "They will learn, or they will go home." But the learning came fast. Within weeks, American units reorganized. Commanders were replaced. Training intensified. By the time the Germans faced them again, something had changed. The Americans no longer attacked blindly. They coordinated armor with infantry. Artillery fire became precise and devastating. Air support arrived on call. German soldiers noticed. They did not say it out loud at first. Pride would not allow it. But in letters home and private conversations, the tone shifted. The Americans were not brilliant tacticians, but they were adaptable. And they did not stop. By 1943 in Italy, German forces encountered American troops in terrain that favored the defender: mountains, narrow valleys, fortified ridgelines. The Germans expected to bleed the Americans dry. Instead, the Americans kept coming back. At Salerno, U.S. units nearly collapsed under German counterattacks. But they held. Naval guns offshore fired point blank into advancing German formations. Supplies flowed in. Reinforcements arrived. The beachhead survived. To German soldiers accustomed to fighting with limited fuel, ammunition shortages, and shrinking manpower, the American logistical machine was astonishing. A German infantryman wrote in his diary, "They fight poorly one day, better the next, and always there are more of them." Back in Normandy, Karl-Heinz Bauer begins to understand what that means. By mid-morning, the Americans have identified the German strongpoints. Mortar rounds fall with unsettling accuracy. Artillery follows, methodical, patient, crushing. Positions that felt secure an hour ago are torn apart in minutes. Then come the aircraft. Fighter bombers scream down out of the clouds, their engines howling like animals. Explosions ripple along the bluffs. Smoke blinds the defenders. Communication lines go dead. Karl-Heinz presses his face into the dirt as the ground shakes. He is no longer thinking about ideology or propaganda. He is thinking about survival. So are the other Germans around him. This is the moment many German soldiers would later describe as the turning point in how they viewed American troops, not as individual fighters, but as part of something far larger. Against the Soviets, they feared close combat. Against the British, stubborn defense. Against the Americans, they feared inevitability. Yet it was not just firepower that reshaped German opinion, it was persistence. Even when pinned down, American soldiers continued to probe. Small groups advanced, where large formations could not. Engineers cleared obstacles under fire. Medics crawled into open ground to drag wounded men back. German defenders noticed that American officers exposed themselves more than expected. Junior leaders shouted orders, waved men forward, and adapted quickly when plans failed. There was less rigidity than German doctrine demanded. And in this chaos, flexibility mattered. By afternoon, parts of Omaha Beach were no longer a killing ground. They were a foothold. As evening approaches, Karl-Heinz Bauer retreats inland with the survivors of his platoon. His uniform is torn. His rifle barrel is hot to the touch. Around him, men move silently, exhausted, stunned by what they have witnessed. No one says it outright, but everyone is thinking the same thing. The Americans were not supposed to fight like this. They were supposed to break, to panic, to retreat. Instead, they adapted. They endured. And now, they are climbing out of the beachhead and into France. For German soldiers experiencing this first contact, the old assumptions are gone. The American soldier is no longer a caricature from a poster or a joke whispered in a barracks. He is real, and he is here. The night after the landings brings no peace. In the hedgerows beyond Omaha, Gefreiter Karl-Heinz Bauer crouches in a shallow scrape hastily dug into the earth. The air smells of crushed leaves, smoke, and damp soil. Somewhere to the west, artillery thumps at irregular intervals, American guns firing even in darkness. There is no clear front line anymore, just pockets of Germans, scattered and uncertain, listening to the sounds of an enemy who never seems to sleep. By dawn on June 7th, 1944, it becomes clear that the Americans are not advancing recklessly. They are consolidating, securing roads, bringing up supplies, building strength before striking again. This, more than anything, unsettles the German soldiers watching them. On the Eastern Front, attacks came in waves, raw, violent, human. Against the British, advances were cautious and formal. But the Americans fight differently. They pause. They observe. Then, when they move, the earth itself seems to rise up against the defender. German soldiers soon learn a bitter lesson. You do not fight the American infantryman alone. You fight his radios. You fight his artillery. You fight his aircraft. And all of them answer at once. By 1944, German troops across Europe share a growing dread that spreads faster than any official report. Once Americans locate you, staying in place becomes suicide. A German lieutenant fighting near Carentan writes later, "The first shells fall as a warning. If you do not move, the next ones erase you." American artillery does not fire blindly. Observers, often forward infantrymen with radios, adjust fire in real time. Mortars bracket trenches. Heavy guns smash tree lines and farmhouses with mathematical precision. German defensive positions, carefully prepared over months, are reduced to rubble in minutes. For soldiers trained to rely on camouflage and concealment, this is terrifying. Karl Heinz witnesses it firsthand when an American patrol stumbles into a German machine gun nest hidden along a sunken lane. The first burst sends the Americans scrambling back. For a moment, it feels like victory. Then, the radio crackles. Within minutes, the road erupts. Explosions tear the hedgerow apart. Dirt rains down. The machine gun falls silent, not because the Americans charged it, but because it ceased to exist. This is the American way of war. German veterans begin to describe the Americans not as bold fighters, but as patient hunters. They do not rush strong points unless forced. They fix the enemy in place, then destroy him with firepower. A paratrooper from the Fallschirmjäger later admits, "We were trained to admire courage. Against the Americans, courage only got you killed." It forces a shift in German tactics. Movement becomes constant. Positions are abandoned at the first hint of detection. Units spread out, trying to avoid presenting targets. But this creates its own problems. Communication breaks down, coordination suffers, and morale erodes. Worst of all is the air. To German soldiers, American air power becomes an omnipresent terror. By mid-morning, the sky belongs to the Allies. P-47 Thunderbolts and P-51 Mustangs roam freely, hunting anything that moves, trucks, tanks, even lone soldiers caught in the open. Columns can only move at night. Even then, flares turn darkness into day. Karl Heinz remembers the scream of dive bombers, the way the sound seems to claw at his chest before the bombs hit. He learns to distinguish aircraft by sound alone, a skill every German soldier quickly develops. The Americans, they say, fight with the sky as their ally. A common saying spreads through German ranks. When the Americans arrive, dig deep. When they stop firing, dig deeper. Yet, amid the fear, a grudging respect begins to form. German officers notice that American firepower is not chaotic. It is disciplined, coordinated. Requests go up the chain and come back down in the form of steel and fire. Where German artillery units are often silent for lack of ammunition, American guns fire as if supplied by an endless river. And in truth, they are. Captured supply dumps reveal the scale of it. Crates of ammunition stacked like walls, fuel cans stretching beyond sight, spare parts, medical supplies, food enough to feed a city. For German soldiers living on half rations, it feels unreal. Some begin to joke darkly that America is not fighting Germany. It is burying it under equipment. Still, the Americans are not invincible. German veterans learn that U.S. troops can be cautious to the point of hesitation. When cut off from artillery or air support, they are vulnerable. German counterattacks at night sometimes succeed, exploiting confusion and inexperience. But even these victories feel temporary. The Americans return the next day, better prepared, better supported, and angrier. Karl Heinz sees this after a successful night ambush that captures several American soldiers. By morning, the German position is under heavy bombardment. The message is clear. Every action has consequences. For many German soldiers, this is when the final illusion shatters. The Americans are not weak. They are not sloppy. They are not merely rich amateurs. They are professionals, backed by an industrial machine unlike anything the world has ever seen. And they are learning faster than Germany can adapt. As the front pushes inland and the bocage fighting intensifies, German troops realize that every engagement with the Americans drains resources they cannot replace. Men, guns, time. The Americans, by contrast, seem to grow stronger with each passing day. By late June, German soldiers whisper a new truth among themselves, one never spoken aloud to officers or in letters home. If the Americans keep coming like this, the war cannot be won. The fighting has slowed into something worse than chaos. For Unteroffizier Wilhelm Kramer, a veteran of Poland, France, and Russia, the hedgerows feel like cages. Visibility is measured in meters. Every gap in the foliage could hide a rifle, a grenade, or a machine gun. This is not a battlefield where doctrine matters. It is a place where individual soldiers decide who lives and who dies. And here, face to face, German soldiers begin to truly study the American infantryman, not through propaganda, not through distant firepower, but up close, breathing the same air, bleeding on the same ground. At first glance, Americans appear almost casual. They chew gum. They shout slang-filled orders. Helmets are worn loosely, jackets unbuttoned when officers aren't watching. To German eyes trained in strict discipline, it looks sloppy, almost disrespectful to war itself. Kramer notices it the first time he watches an American patrol halt near a hedgerow opposite his position. The men joke quietly. One taps another on the helmet. Another checks his rifle while humming under his breath. These men, Kramer thinks, cannot be serious. Then the shooting starts. The Americans react instantly. Jokes vanish. Movements become sharp and coordinated. Two men fire while another flanks. Grenades arc through the air with practiced ease. A machine gun opens up, pinning Kramer's squad in place. Within seconds, the tone shifts completely. German soldiers begin to understand that American informality does not equal indiscipline. It is confidence, born of training, trust in equipment, and faith that support will come when needed. German after-action reports increasingly note this paradox. American soldiers are described as relaxed until engaged, then aggressive and determined once under fire. Unlike German doctrine, which emphasizes rigid obedience, American units allow initiative at lower levels. A German captain observes, "The American corporal fights his own battle." This unsettles German troops used to centralize command. American NCOs make decisions quickly, calling in fire, shifting positions, adapting without waiting for orders. It creates unpredictability, especially in close combat. And in the hedgerows, unpredictability kills. German soldiers also notice the Americans' relationship with fear. They are afraid, openly so. They swear, shout, and sometimes panic. But fear does not paralyze them for long. American training emphasizes action over perfection. Move, shoot, communicate, survive. Kramer watches an American soldier freeze during a sudden exchange, only to be physically shoved forward by a sergeant yelling at him to keep moving. The man stumbles, fires wildly, then steadies himself and fights on. German soldiers are trained to suppress emotion, to maintain control at all costs. When control breaks, collapse can follow. The Americans, by contrast, seem allowed to break briefly, then recover. This flexibility, German veterans later admit, makes them resilient. Another surprise is how Americans treat one another. German soldiers are accustomed to hierarchy, distance between ranks, discipline enforced by fear as much as respect. The Americans operate differently. Officers eat the same food as enlisted men. Medics risk themselves without hesitation. Junior soldiers argue openly with superiors, sometimes even during combat. At first, Germans interpret this as weakness. Then, they see its effect. American units do not disintegrate easily. When officers are killed, NCOs take over. When NCOs fall, privates step up. The system absorbs loss without collapsing. A German Feldwebel writes bitterly, "Kill an American officer and nothing changes." In close combat, German respect grows further. American soldiers may lack the refined marksmanship of German veterans, but they compensate with volume of fire and aggressive movement. They use grenades liberally. Submachine guns chatter constantly. Riflemen advance under covering fire rather than waiting for perfect conditions. And they are stubborn. German troops learn that once Americans commit to an objective, forcing them off requires overwhelming effort. They will withdraw if ordered, but rarely out of fear alone. One German officer compares them to a tide that pulls back briefly, then returns higher than before.